and subscribe.
December 2018 in a forest in Payson, Arizona. Four teenage friends had fun plans for the night, but instead, they ran into something that left them traumatized for life. This is the transcript of Jacob Lloyd's story as he recounted their horrifying experience in an interview. I've had a draft of this story set up for a while, but I've been too worried and scared to tell it. It made me question everything: my faith, my eyes, and my sanity. I've decided it's time to finally let others know about what I've experienced, as it may help me move on. At least, that's what I hope. I recently moved westward to Arizona from the boring state of Oklahoma. I am a devout Christian, and never once before had I believed there were entities in existence that we couldn't hunt down with our modern advancements. It's 2019, for heaven's sake. You'd figure if we wanted to find something, we would. And most of all, we could. It was the 23rd of December, 2018. I was in Payson, Arizona, a bit north of Phoenix. My friends and I, in our Christmas spirit, decided to head out north of town, about 5 to 6 miles or so into the forest on a secluded trail. It was cold that night. Some of my friends shivered and displayed obvious signs of unpreparedness. I was layered fairly well, and yet the winds and frigid cold punctured through my layers and onto me. We wanted to make a bonfire, warm up, and enjoy ourselves with a few drinks. I knew as soon as I got into the car to head that way, something was off. I felt sick and uneasy, and something in my gut told me to just stay home. But I couldn't put my finger on just what, and I ignored my ever so looming feelings of anxiety. We picked up friends and headed to the trail. I'm a huge nature lover and always felt safe in the confines of the forest. I felt in control and at ease, but not tonight. It may sound cliché, but I'll be damned if it didn't feel like someone was watching me when we finally got there. And when I had gotten far enough down the trail that turning back would be no hasty endeavor, it finally hit me why I felt so eerie. That same year, during the weeks prior to Thanksgiving, I was here before. It's not a spot we usually go to. Therefore, I was not familiar with it, nor were my friends. We were coming out for the same reason we were in December, for a few drinks around a bonfire. It was late. It was my job to gather firewood. I didn't mind. My chance to survey and explore the area around us wouldn't be bad. Before I even left our area, things took a turn for the strange. I was at the edge of the light. It was being cast from the small bonfire I was to gather more fuel for. In the faint glow of the far trees, I caught a glimpse of something darting behind a tall pine. I asked backward to my friends if it was out of the ordinary for people to be hanging around this spot. My query was only met with silence from them as they drank on. I took a few more steps beyond the comfort of the blaze, keeping my eyes affixed to the tall, shadowy figure fixated behind the tall trees. I could faintly make out that it had moved in a slight, bobbing motion, like a buoy upon a tide. My immediate thoughts drew a blank as to why someone would be out here doing this. Maybe I was seeing things, or it was a prank of some sort. I opened my mouth to call out or even crack a joke, but was mortified when I realized I could not speak. Something inside of me prevented me from making any noise. My heart raced. As swiftly as it came, it shot off into the distance like a bullet. Being startled so badly, I fell back onto the ground and kicked myself back like a spooked animal, scratching and cutting my hands as I did so. My friends saw me and laughed, thinking I was drunk. I managed to stammer out a line about what I saw, but I was only met with a few blank stares and laughs, making me sound stupid. For the rest of the night, I never dared step away from the beams of the bonfire. As I walked down that trail that frigid December evening, I remembered what I had seen and felt on that cold November night, and my stomach dropped. My friends were slurring out Christmas carols and other drunk epiphanies. I knew they wouldn't listen to me even if I spoke out, so I ignored the guttural feelings, prayed for the best, and walked on. I hadn't been drinking much this night either. I don't enjoy alcohol as much as my friends, and often I was the one responsible for herding them home when the night was over. However, to calm my tense nerves, I had a drink or two from some beer we had chilled in the ice chest. It was Christmas after all. It worked. We were all having a good time, enjoying our festive feelings and generally savoring the crisp forest atmosphere. Soon, nature called, and forgetting my prior ordeal, I began to walk away from the fire to relieve myself. I walked a fair 300 or so feet away, toward a big rock resting behind some fallen trees, not wanting to be seen doing my business. I was not even far enough away from the fire to not be able to hear my friends' voices echoing through the woodlands. From behind me, my friend Corbin, who had come along, called out my name. I'll admit I was tipsy, but nowhere near enough to not differentiate reality from a drunken stupor. I remember calling out to him, telling him to give me a moment to finish. I zipped up and turned to walk around the rock to where I heard him wander. I don't know what it was, but sure as all heaven above and hell below, it was not Corbin. It took me a minute for my woozy mind to put this together and stop walking toward it. I am thankful I did. This being stood tall, at least 6 to 7 feet. Its eyes burned like our fire. It moved from a dog-like four-limb position to standing tall. The light from the moon on this cold night radiated the body, showing off its dark, slender shape with an inhuman sheen. I began to sob, violently. My mind ran in panicked circles. Seconds felt like lifetimes as my world ground to a halt at the clawed feet of the beast that I was sure was going to take my life from me right then and there. I did the only thing I could think to do. I dropped to my knees and began to pray. This monster, to my petrified brain, had to have been the devil himself. To imagine him as anything worse would be impossible. It did not like my pleas to God. An unholy shriek rang out. I can only think to describe it as someone screaming loudly with lungs full of water. I screamed in terror and, with all the strength I could muster, lunged backward across the forest floor, running as fast as my legs could take me. I fell a few times, I think, in sheer panic. I just couldn't manage to get my body to work properly, knowing that thing was near. When I returned in a panicked craze to the fire, covered in sweat, dirt, and tears, I managed to wheeze out what happened somewhat through my sobs of fear. I think I was so horrified in that moment that I had a small seizure because everything else was a blur. And I also remember the last I saw of the thing before I made my frenzied flee, when it smiled back at me through the forest and skittered off into the darkness. A few days after Christmas, I was able to get in touch with a native elder here in town. I was so scared mentioning the event because I was worried of being mocked or him not believing me. To a twist of my thinking, I told him very vividly what I had encountered. He wholeheartedly believed and told me it was a skinwalker. He then blessed me thoroughly and told me to leave that stretch of land alone and to never venture out there again. Next time, I might not be so lucky. He didn't have to tell me twice. I know, I sound crazy. If I were you, I wouldn't believe me either. But you don't have to. All you have to know is, for the love of God above and all things holy, never forget that we are not alone on this earth. Sometimes during the night, whenever I look out my window, I still catch sight of eyes in the trees looking back at me.
Like and subscribe.